Alright, I'm going to make this video as if I'm talking to myself at the age of 17, 18 years old. The mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. What's called resignation is confirmed desperation. It's a quote from Henry Thoreau, and it embodies the existence of the majority of men on this planet, perhaps women as well. I can't speak to that category of human because I'm a man, but I can talk to you. You can change. It doesn't matter how bad your life currently is. It doesn't matter how much anxiety you're going through, how much stress, fear, desperation, resignation, lack of anything that you want. Getting what you don't want, suffering, feeling miserable, loneliness, anxiety, fear, depression. All of these mental vices that hold you and prevent you from making meaningful progress along a trajectory that would create fulfillment in your life. You can change, you can get rid of them, you can evolve. And I'm here to tell you it's possible. And I'm here to be honest and transparent with you and to reveal my past sense of self and my character to you so that you can use me and my change and development and evolution as a vehicle for confidence, a vehicle for faith, and a method in general. When I was 18 years old, I didn't have much going for me. I'd been heavily bullied throughout my time in school. I didn't have many friends. I was addicted to video games. I ate nothing but junk food and, I had no control over my impulses. I binge-watched YouTube. I binge-watched anything I could. I didn't have any discipline. I didn't have any direction. I was nothing but a ball of anxiety and stress. And I was desperate to change. I was desperate for a way out. I was desperate for a leg up, so to speak. And in the end, I had to create my own leg up and my own vehicle for change. Now, I'm a multimillionaire. I live in Dubai on the Palm. I have the body I want. My health is in great standing. I have a supportive and loving group of friends. I have a brotherhood. I have a company. I have everything that I could ever dreamed of and more. I have the freedom to do what I want, when I want, with who I want, whenever I want, however I want. I am free financially. I am not in the gutter, mentally, physically, spiritually. I've changed. And I need you to understand that it wasn't by some miracle, nor was it a stroke of luck, nor was it down to chance. I wasn't miraculously struck by lightning. I didn't have a random dream and wake up blessed. I worked. And I'm here to tell you how you can change. And I'm here to share with you exactly what worked with me along my journey towards self-actualization and what I would call self-transcendence. You see, the concept of identity is misconstrued in modern society. The premise and the presupposition that we base our lives on and that our paradigm is developed through is that we are who we are and we cannot change. Our identity basically is the strongest force in the world. Identity trumps biology in command of the body. And what that means is that who you think you are and who you believe you are and how you orient yourself and your self-image in the world against, the reality itself determines what you get in life. In other words, everything is upstream of your identity. Your suffering, your woes, your desperation, your anxiety, your anger, your shame, your guilt. Any level of suffering that is inflicted upon you is coming from your identity and how you've tied yourself to the world. Because in order for us to effectively operate in the world, we must assume an identity. Because to not have an identity and to not pin ourselves in some way would basically be like floating in the ocean. The identity is the buoy that we cling on to in the middle of the ocean. To not have it would be to have nothing. And to have nothing would be to float among the ocean amongst nothing but pure chaos. And so identity provides us with a structure of order among a chaotic world. Alas, the problem is that most people cling to the wrong thing. They cling to the buoy, they cling to the pole in the middle of the ocean. And as the waves and the sea salt and the spray and everything crashes over them, they cling on for dear life. And the waves and the sea and the storm, that represents life. It represents the objective world, reality itself, throwing problems at you, difficulties, suffering, etc., bad people, good people, things this, that, and the other. But sometimes you have to allow yourself to be taken by the storm. Because what you don't realize is that typically upstream of the storm is another form of identity that you can cling on to. And you need to allow yourself to enter the realm of chaos and to remove the sense of self that is tying you down, that you so desperately cling on to for order, and enter the realm and pit of chaos. Let me ask you a question. What is a knight without a dragon? And what is a hero without a villain? What is order without chaos? For good to exist, bad must also exist. It's called the duality. You cannot have good without bad. What's a knight without a dragon? A knight is a man, a standard everyday man. This is the archetype. This is why we watch action movies. It's the hero myth. It's the hero archetype. It's the strongest form of resonance probably known to mankind. The hero myth, the hero archetype. Hell, if you're not acting it out in your day-to-day work, you're probably watching it through Netflix or some sort of action movie. But what does it mean? Well, a typical normal man with a normal life, with a normal identity, is called upon to partake in a mission. And the mission involves slaying a dragon. Dragons, well, what are they? They are winged snakes. In the Bible, I'm not bringing religion into this, but I'm going to explain. What is a dragon? A dragon is basically a snake with wings. And the earliest sort of understanding of what a snake is comes from the Bible, at least in modern civilization. And the snake is used by the authors of the Bible, and essentially by God, to represent chaos. And so the dragon is chaos. And so in order for the man to become the knight, he has to let go of his identity and take on chaos. And through the chaos, he becomes something else. And by battling with the chaos and defeating it, and essentially converting it into order, he earns his self-respect, his fulfillment, he achieves his mission, he gets the damsel in distress or pot of gold, and he returns home with the new earned respect of his family, his friends, his community, but more importantly, himself. And you have to learn to do the same. I need you to imagine that what you want in life, what you so desire, a goal, so to speak, an outcome, a dream, the ideal life for you, whatever that might look like, it's a goal, it's a snapshot of the future. It's an effect. It's something that exists in arbitrary term in our imagination. It's a state of reality that can be manifested. In order for you to manifest it, you have to become he who can. Understand, we don't achieve goals. We don't accomplish dreams. We don't achieve anything. What we do is we become a certain type of person. And as a result of becoming that person, the goal or the achievement naturally manifests. Let me give you a thought experiment to clarify this point. Let's say your goal is to become a millionaire. You want to become a millionaire. Well, how do you become a millionaire? By becoming the kind of person that can make $1 million. And I can tell you from experience, that's how you do it. You don't go after the money, you go after the character. And by becoming the person that can make the money, you will. You don't make money. You make an identity, and that identity goes out into the world and attracts the money. Now that might sound a bit woo-wah, so I can give you some examples later, but just bear with me here. Your life basically comes from your character. Who you are, your identity, your sense of self, the belief systems you have, the skills, the habits, everything that encapsulates your sense of self. Everything that happens to you is upstream of your character. Every decision you've ever made has led you up to this point where you are right now, sat here watching me talk about this thing, probably alone in a dark room, whatever. Everything you've ever done has led up to this very moment. And so what that means is that where you are right now is your fault. And that might infuriate you. The fact that I'm telling you that you're suffering and all of this hard life that you have, you're not happy with where you are right now, it's all your fault. It is your life. It is your responsibility. And you have done this to yourself. Now, through this, there are two paths of emotional state. Anger, or what we could call control. There are going to be things that have happened to you in the past that may have held you down. They might have made you suffer. There are going to be people, events, traumatic things that have happened to you. But for as long as you blame them, and for as long as you point the finger of your miserable, defiant existence at these external things, you can never take control. You can never actually have the reins of your life and assume the responsibility that you need to assume to slay the dragon, encounter the chaos, convert it into order, and return home a hero. Responsibility is the cornerstone of growth. And until you sit down and look at yourself in the mirror and truly accept, and not only accept, but believe and firmly understand that you are responsible for your life and no one has done this to you but yourself, then I hear you say, well, but it was, my dad was abusive, this happened, or this person died when I was younger, or this. It's true, there are going to be things that have been sent by God or the universe or whatever you believe in to test you. But the human will is pretty hard to break for the human that understands they have it. And so the first thing I had to do when I was 18 years old, when I was sat addicted to League of Legends and junk food in my parents' house, miserable, without a girlfriend, without really anything, the first thing I had to do was look at myself in the mirror amidst all of my self-hatred and my anger and my shame, and look at myself and admit that it was all my fault. And the second I did that, my life changed. The second I let reason and responsibility triumph over ego and narcissism and victimhood was the second that the trajectory of my entire life completely changed. Because you need to understand the premise of identity. You put yourself here. What is self-image? What is this identity that we talk of? The self doesn't really exist. It's merely you clinging to stories about the past that you've built up about yourself. I ask you to point to your identity. What is it? What is this arbitrary, intangible reflection of self that we seem to have that controls our life and determines which path we take and what decisions we make and causes all the suffering and pain of our miserable existence? What is it? You might point to yourself and say, well, this is me. I have a body. I have a name. I have a driving license. I have a passport. But that's not your identity. A name is not an identity. A name is nothing but an arbitrary collection of, it's a sound. It's a sound bite. So you're not your name. You're not your body, because your body is just, it's just atoms. It's just physical flesh and bone with certain pigment structure and certain organs that every other person has. It might be your body, but it's certainly not your identity. And so I ask you to battle with this and ask yourself, well, who am I? What are you? What is your identity? Think about that for a second. What is the self-image? How does it manifest? Because I can tell you it doesn't manifest purely by luck. Your identity is basically a collection of belief systems. And basically for everything in your life, you have a scale. And on one side of the scale, you have positive experiences, and on the other side of the scale, you have negative experiences. And so every single belief operates like this, like a T, it's like a scale, okay? And let's say that you have the belief of work ethic. And let's say that you currently see yourself as someone that doesn't work very hard. You don't believe you have a work ethic. You believe you're lazy. That is a fragment of your identity. So understand that the identity is basically a collection of fragments about how you've oriented yourself in the world. And all it is basically a scale of all these fragments. And the scale will tip into the positive or negative direction. It's a binary state. And so what that means is if you believe you haven't got a good work ethic, it's purely because you've had lots of negative experiences by telling yourself that you don't have a work ethic. And every time you make a statement about yourself, every time you go back to the past and revisualize something that happened to you or revisualize something that affirms a specific fragment of your identity, what you're doing is something that we call self-solidification, where if you believe you haven't got a good work ethic because in school your teacher told you you don't work hard, that's the cornerstone of a very important fragment of your identity that needs to associate itself with entrepreneurship for you to succeed. And so ask yourself, let's just take this example of work ethic. Let's say that you see yourself as someone that doesn't have a work ethic. I'd ask you why. And you'd say, well, that's just because of who I am. Well, why are you just who you are? Where does this identity come from? It doesn't just randomly come out of nowhere. For every cause, there is an effect. For every action, there is an opposite and equal reaction. And so it had to happen. And so what we can usually do is trace all of our identity and belief systems back to things that happened to us when we were younger. Say you're 10 years old and you forget to do your maths homework. And in front of your entire class, your teacher says to you, Charlie, you just don't have a work ethic. You don't work hard. It's so apparent. Everyone sees it. You don't have a work ethic. And you being 10 years old, you go home to your mother, your father, and you say, oh, Miss Johnson said I don't have a work ethic. And they say, well, maybe she's right. You haven't been really working. Who works at 10 years old, right? But this is what happens. And then 10-year-old you forms a belief about himself. And throughout his teenage years and early adulthood, all he does is act in accordance with what he believes to be true about himself. This is called praxis. For a human being, it is near impossible to behave out of alignment with something that we believe to be true about ourselves. When you do that, you experience something called cognitive dissonance, which is extremely hard to deal with. It's basically pain that comes as a result of us acting in a way that is completely counter to how we've oriented ourselves into the world. Let's say, for example, if you don't believe me, if you think, Charlie, how can you say that? Of course I can act out of alignment with what I believe to be true. Well, take your political stance, take yourself over to the polling station and vote for the politician that you hate. Well, I'm not going to do that. That's just a stupid example. That's your belief talking. Understand that people don't have beliefs. Beliefs have people. And so you can change your belief systems. Because if you're the kind of person that believes that you haven't got a work ethic, you've got to understand that belief has a genesis and it has a consistent reinforcement. Every time you tell yourself you don't have a work ethic, or every time you go back to imagine times that you haven't had a work ethic, or every time you think about it, you're reinforcing this belief and you're stacking that scale into the negative experience to the point where you've polarized yourself and assumed a strong form of identity against a specific facet of reality, against how you orient yourself into it. And so, let me ask you this question. And I want you to write this down, or at least nod or shake your head in response to this question. Do you think there is at least a slim chance of you being successful in this world and achieving your goal? You have a goal right now, right? Do you think there's even just a minute small chance that you might be able to make it happen? Do you believe that to be true? Now you should either be nodding your head, shaking your head. The answer is probably yes. But I'm sorry to tell you, but there's no chance at all. If you were the kind of person that could have achieved your goal, then you would have already done it, or you'd be a damn sight closer to it than you were now. And that is the sobering reality of modern society. Self-solidification is the biggest tragedy of the 21st century. Understand we don't achieve goals, remember, we achieve characters. And so within your current character and space, there's no chance of you achieving your goal, because who you are right now simply cannot. But who you need to become can. So let me re-ask the question. Do you think there's even a slim chance that you might be able to become the person capable of achieving your goal? And the answer to that question should be yes. If it's not yes, God help you. Because your goal is outside of your control. The future state of reality that you desire to manifest into this, 3D world you can't really chase it. It comes as a result of you. People achieve goals, and so if you want to achieve your goal, become the person that can. Ask yourself, if you want to make $10,000 a month, if you want to make $100,000 a month, if you want to make $1 million a year, $10 billion a year, I don't know. Ask yourself, what does that person look like? What identity do they have to assume? Make a list. I can tell you what someone looks like making 10 grand a month. Discipline and persuasion. Are you, in your current state of reality and identity, persuasive? Are you disciplined? If you lack the discipline to do the work required to, drive your will into the direction of, building some sort of business, you're not going to make any money. And if you're not able to persuade and convince people to buy from you, you're not going to make any money. That's a very reductive analysis of the identity required to get to $10,000 a month. But those are the two first principles and facets of change that you have to see in yourself, and discipline and persuasion. And so if you're not disciplined right now, and if you're not persuasive right now, then you're not going to achieve the $10,000 a month mark that you wish. And you might think you're disciplined, and you might think you're persuasive, but I'd ask you to challenge that. Because if you were, you'd have already built a business, and you'd already got a bunch of clients, and you'd be continuing to grow. You can ask yourself, what does someone making 100 grand a month look like? There's all sorts of these things, but for now it's just best to focus on what's immediately in front of you. And understand, back to what I mentioned earlier, you currently have a sense of self that you're going to cling on to and hold on to for dear life. You do not want to let go of your identity, consciously and unconsciously, because to do that invites chaos. And chaos invites pain. And so imagine this. Sat in front of you right now is your character. And your character looks like a massive ball of wet clay. Or it's a massive stone. Let's just use a stone. It's a huge boulder in front of you right now. And that boulder represents potential. This is just big. Let's just say it's like a 6-foot stone, 2 feet wide. And that stone represents your potential, it represents your future, it represents your character. And your job as an entrepreneur, or a young man, or an old man, or a young woman, or an old woman, trying to orient yourself through life and become successful, is to wake up every single day, get out your chisel and your hammer, and tap away until you've developed the stone figure that you want to develop. But before you can do that, you have to define what you want the stone to look like. Because getting up and just basically chiseling away at a rock with no objective, no vision, or no desire for what you want the end result to look like means that you're going to have a pretty messed up rock. And that's what most people's lives look like. They don't think about what they want because they don't believe they can change. They don't believe that their identity can be adapted. You are malleable as a human being. You are pliant. You can bend your identity with your will, and it will mold. And so, what is the psychological chisel? Because obviously you can't just go to a rock and just chisel and then spend a few years on that and then make a load of money. Unless you're a professional sculptor selling sculptures, of course you could. But the chisel is pain. Pain is the currency that you have to pay for change. Pain is the currency of change, personal change. And pain manifests when effort meets resistance. And so here's how it works. You have your current identity. You have your desired identity. For the simple, arbitrary example of this video, current identity, no work ethic. desired identity, strong work ethic. What's going to happen is that in order for you to achieve your goal, you need to go from A to B. You need to change. You need to go from this person over here to this person over here. And when you start trying to make that change, when you start trying to act out of accordance with your self-image and your identity, resistance will manifest. Resistance is any form of psychological resistance or pressure to prevent you from doing what needs to be done to change. Because your current sense of self as an identity has what we would call a psychological survival instinct. It doesn't want to die. It's just like any organism. Your current identity, your current sense of self does not want to die. That pole, that buoy that you're clinging onto in the middle of the ocean, like, you don't want to let go of it. It's got you in its grips. You're not holding on to it. It's holding on to you. Okay? It's a very important lesson. And so resistance will manifest. If you think you haven't got a work ethic and suddenly you start working hard, you're going to get all of the bullshit. You're going to have fear. You're going to have doubt. You're going to have anxiety. You're going to have anything under the sun, procrastination. All of the stuff that comes up from your identity, from your brain, that prevents you from working and doing things that you know need to be done to become this other person, is what we call resistance. The doubts that come at 3 a.m, the coping mechanisms you use, the fear, the anxiety, the suffering, the burnout, whatever it is, all of these things are just resistance. They are your current sense of self so desperately trying to survive. And when you meet this resistance that comes as a result of your identity basically fading away, and when you meet this resistance with effort, which is basically your human will, we get pain. And so if you feel doubt and you feel anxiety about doing the work or about just, anything in general, making the cold calls, doing the sales calls, and you feel all the scare, you're just scared of it, whatever, when you actually do them, you're in pain. Okay? And like I said, the single greatest currency you have for change is pain. And so every time you go into a painful situation to change your identity and to ply yourself into something different, you experience pain. And every time you experience pain, you're building up your psychological bank of pain. You're building up your reserves of pain. And so what's going to happen is the universe is going to watch you. And there's a quote: to get what you want, you have to deserve what you want. The world is not yet a crazy enough place to reward a whole bunch of undeserving people, from Charlie Munger. To deserve basically means to suffer. If you want something, you have to deserve it. And what's the first principle of deserving something? Going through some hell to get it, right? And so you want to invite as much pain and as much suffering, productive suffering and meaningful and fulfilling suffering, by the way, into your life as possible. And I'm not talking about waking up and just self-harming or trying to stub your toe over and over again to put yourself in more pain. That's stupid. The point I'm trying to make here is productive, meaningful, fulfilling pain that comes as a result of your human will combating and meeting the resistance that's manifested from your current sense of identity that's trying to survive. And if you do this for long enough, the universe will watch. And as time elapses, and this is the key variable that everyone misunderstands in personal growth and personal change and everything, is time. As time elapses, you'll be able to go and bargain with the universe. Because when you set a goal, what you're doing is you're negotiating with the universe. You're saying, I want this. But in order for you to get it, you have to give. The world and the entire universe works on the nature of transaction. For every action, there is an opposite and equal reaction. And if the action you want is to achieve your goal, you need to have to go through a reaction. And what is that reaction? It's pain. And to get what you want, you must deserve what you want. And so when you go to the universe and you say, I want 10 grand a month, I want my dream body, I want my dream wife, I want to be able to travel, I want financial freedom, the universe is going to say, okay, I'm willing to give you those things, but in order for you to get them, you have to deserve them. And to deserve them, you have to go from who you are right now into the person who you need to become to deserve it. And the thing that bridges the gap between where you are now and where you want to be is pain. And so we are naturally built as human beings, as creatures of the universe, to avoid pain. It's the The first principle of psychology is likely to be pain avoidance. I say likely because even though I've read hundreds of books on psychology, I still consider myself uneducated in the study and endeavours of the human mind, because it's a deeper thing than you, me, Jung or Freud could probably ever have realised. But we are by nature organisms. We are like animals, right? And all animals have a pain avoidance mechanism built into them. It's a survival instinct. It's raw. It's visceral. It's deep. I think I can hear some fireworks, but we're going to keep going, right? Kind of adds to the ambience. Don't know if you can hear them on the mic. I hope not. Either that or it's gunshots and I'm about to die, and this is my final message, but I'd be quite happy with that. And so you're bargaining with the universe, and time will elapse, and there will come a time when you become the person who you needed to become. Through building up your pain reserves and waking up every morning and chipping away at this rock, you eventually finish the sculpture. And you step back and you look at your life and you think, hang on a minute, I've got everything that I want and more. I have my dream body. I have the girlfriend I want. I'm a millionaire. I have a wonderful team. My family relationships are well put together. I have meaning in my life. I have genuine joy and fulfillment with my work. I have a large, strong group of friends that support me and that I love. You need to understand that if you want a good life, you have to suffer for it. There's a quote, I don't know who from, but it was on the wall of my gym growing up. And it says that if you're going through hell, keep going. Because there's two trajectories you can take in your life. There's two paths you can walk. And the real truth is that pain is unavoidable. Path number one is you keep doing what you're doing. You deny responsibility for your current situation. You ignore the signs and everything like that, because understand that when you set a goal or when you have a vision for the future, that is your unconscious, is an unconscious force. It's a deep, deep part of you that is so viscerally attached to growth and change, because we are creatures of the universe and the only constant is change. And so we want to change, but you keep going on this normal path. You end up somewhere you don't want to be. You end up miserable. You end up embodying the quote by Henry Thoreau, "The mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. What's called resignation is confirmed desperation." And that's painful. Path number one sucks. You're at the mercy of the externals. You have no control over your life. You have no sense of fulfillment or meaning. You float through life feeling unworthy and undeserving, but your ego protects you from the shame, and you convince yourself that, it's not really your fault, and that it's just down to bad luck. And you write yourself off as a victim. And in the ongoing march of history and time, you are forgotten, with no impact, with no meaning. You just existed. That's painful. And so, with trajectory number one, you might not be in much pain now, but the suffering that you feel in your life right now might be pretty harsh, but it's only going to get worse. Option number two is to become the hero. It's to slay the dragon. It's to tackle the villain. And in order for you to do that, you have to go and seek the pain. And you have to enjoy it. Every morning you have to wake up and ask yourself, how can I tackle myself? Because your business, or whatever you're trying to achieve in life, is nothing but an arbitrary representation, an intangible magnification of you wanting to beat yourself. My business serves the purpose of making me money, but above all, it serves the purpose of allowing me to manifest my potential and to grow and develop into a human being that far transcends what I used to be and what I am right now. It's a tool. Whatever you're working on right now is a way for you to manifest your potential. You cling on to it and you work on it, and through working on it, you change. And so, if you're not happy with your life right now, and you're not content with the way things are going, if your future looks bleak, if you're miserable and you're sad and you're unhappy, and you're anxious and you're lonely, I encourage you to let go of the buoy in the ocean. I encourage you to let go of the pole in the sea that you're so desperately clinging onto because you don't want to drown. And allow yourself to be taken by the chaos and the waves. And in the chaos and the waves, find the strength and the willpower to muster up something so strong that you float above the chaos. Because the worst thing that can happen is you drown. And it's better to drown than to cling on to something you don't want to cling on to for 75 years.